The Twilight Zone is a very odd place to be living in. How about you?
Feeling pretty good, thank you. Well, all things considered, I'm healthy and my family's healthy, and we're blessed, and we hope it stays that way. That's all.
Yes. Well, it is the unknowns, I think, that are driving people crazy and testing people's mettle and strength. I guess what we're debating as a society is, are we locked down enough? Are we sheltered in place enough? Can we really, lick this thing in the short term without total cooperation? I think is the question on people's minds. I think that, images from people congregating on the beaches in Florida and Georgia were very unsettling over the weekend. And, we start a lockdown here in New York. But I think the question, remains is it enough? There's an interesting stat here. So South Korea avoided locking down any city because it had moved early with extraordinary speed for testing. In January, the country had 4 companies making the tests, and as of March, it had tested 210,000 citizens, the equivalent of what would be 2.3 million Americans. At the same time, fewer than 9,000 Americans had been tested. I think the problem we're having in this country is that we've shown that we are not a country that can move at the kind of max speed that has been needed for this virus. We know that we're a country that's pretty good at mobilizing after a natural disaster and ramping up to go to war and those sort of things. But I mean, my impression is what's been shown is that I guess we were not prepared for this pandemic. And one of the stories that we did last week, actually really over the weekend, was it was a little unusual for the sort of thing that we would do at Rockland County Business Journal, but it was one anecdotal story that was told to us by a woman who believed that she might be positive on the virus. And it's just a story about how she couldn't get through on the hotline to the Anthony Wayne testing center, how her primary care doctor told her they weren't seeing patients, and how out of desperation she showed up at an urgent care center. And of course, actually in another story we laid out, we spoke in an earlier story last week, we spoke to the Rockland Urgent Care Center in West Haverstraw, and the nurse practitioner / owner there, explained what the CDC guidelines are for giving people tests. And, it's fever, it's age, and it's exposure. So this particular woman who went to an urgent care center, she's nearly 62. She did not have a fever per se, but she's, feeling really awful. And at the time that she went to the urgent care center, she didn't even know that there was an exposure issue. So put that aside for a second. Meanwhile, she went to the urgent care center, and they weren't going to give her a test because she didn't quite fit the criteria. Long story short, as she likes to say, this may have been, she's a saleswoman, and she said this may have been her greatest sales pitch. She was able to convince the doctor there to test her, and now she's waiting with 7 days. She said she's waiting 7 days for New York State to call her if she's positive, and apparently there's no phone call if you're not positive. Long story short, she found out later in the day that her grandchild had been at a daycare in the county where somebody had tested positive. So we have this situation, which you can see at a localized level and at a state level, where we just, we're making this up as we go. In New Jersey, for example, they opened up a testing center at the Bergen Community College this morning, and by 8 in the morning, the site had reached capacity and was not accepting any more patients today. So I think we're. I know that we're not hysterical yet, we're not panicked yet, but I think that there are people who, if they are not feeling well, as this woman, as I described, was not feeling well, are feeling a panic for the want of, medical. It's like all the rules have been thrown out the window. You call your primary care physician and they say, we're not seeing patients. I have this thought, like if you have a toothache, how are you supposed to weather that? Right? I mean, let's face it. There are a lot of things that you can kind of, patch up yourself and get through. But I guess unless you have a lot of whiskey around, how do you weather a toothache, for example? So I think it's just the lack of speed and the lack of clarity about how our medical care system now technically works is what is giving a sense of. My heart goes out to the healthcare professionals for sure. They will be the true heroes here. And
lady called up and says, "Tell her to use Oragel." So that we solved that one.
Well, I think that's if you're a baby and you're teething, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to solve like what's that? Or like when you get a root canal, like a dying nerve or something like that, and it's everyone's had a toothache. Everyone knows how distressful that can be. But no, I think it's tough times. I don't know. What sense do you have? What have you been hearing?
Look. We're in uncharted territory. I'm not going to play the blame game. There are politicians who I don't especially like, and like, for example, our governor, and I admire the way he's handling this. Because I'm not above saying that somebody who I don't especially personally like is, because I don't like him, he's not doing a good job. So. Right.
No, I mean, I'm not saying this is about politics. I'm saying this is about policy. I'm saying it's about. Just it has shown us that we were not prepared for this pandemic. That it's just the case is.
Yeah. All right. Look, what have you got in the paper here? Because we got to move along. It's not the paper. It's the Rockland Business Journal.
Well, I think we have some information about SBA loans.
Okay.
And that's going to be very important for businesses to save their necks. What else? We're on lockdown now, and so it's just down to essential businesses. And I think that one thing that this is going to create is businesses will become creative.
Yep.
In the way they try to save themselves. Do you have a full staff there today, or is everybody?
Well, it's just me, Jeff, and I. We're the only two people here.
Yeah.
On any given morning.
Yeah.
Pete Clementi's engineer is sick, so I'll probably come back and do that this afternoon with him. But, the station hangs on by a thread anyway, so it's just a small staff to begin with. So it's just another day in paradise.
But are you guys wearing gloves and masks?
No.
Oh, you should be.
No.
How come?
Because I don't feel like it. Do I tell you what to do?
What?
Do I tell you what to do? Then don't tell me what to do.
All right.
All right?
All right.
Have a good week.
Stay well.